Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Raffi, you're joined by Davian, along with, I would say, a special guest, but it's also a familiar guest. For the first time in a while, he has returned from the University of Alabama. Theodore, it's great to have you back on again. Glad you can come back on. We can talk a little bit about the World Cup. Obviously, you've been doing a great job covering it behind the scenes. No, I know it's very easy viewer to think that that's Zlatan that we're talking to, but no, it is Theodore, one of our good friends and former co-host of the podcast. Theodore, it's great to have you back on again, and great to be talking the World Cup, because I know that this is going to be a lot of dead time of Dave and I mourning, so it's at least good to mourn with more people. It makes things more easier to go along. So Theodore, before I hand it over to Davian, as we've naturally been doing, how are you? How have things been? And yeah, how's covering the World Cup? I'm sure there's not a dull moment in the office right now.
There certainly is not. The hours have been absurd, but I'm having a great time. And I'm having a great time here getting to speak with you guys. It's been very long overdue for me to come back. I miss being on this show with you guys. Hope everything's going well. And I'm really, really excited to talk about what has been just such a special tournament despite the events of Monday night.
Yeah, no, it's been very special in many ways, and very special to have you back on, Theodore. I guess I could kick things off. I almost teared up yesterday when Team USA lost. I lost my voice not because of Team USA, but through other reasons. But it's very fitting that I'm losing my voice now. But with that being said, today's games were incredibly exciting. Watching Argentina play, and then the Colombia-Switzerland game. So let's get right into it. Theodore, you've been in the office. You've been seeing a lot of things. Let's break down first and get the elephant out of the room out of the way. Team USA's loss. Let's break it down. What are your thoughts? What did you see kind of like going through the video, watching the games, watching other teams? What went wrong for Team USA? And then, Raffi, I'd love to hear you chime in as well after.
Did anything go wrong for Team USA? Because I look at this game yesterday and I see just a continuation of the history of U.S. soccer. I think that we, as a country, got really invested into the sport and into this tournament, which I think was incredible. And I think it's great that we got involved, and it's been a great time so far. But you got to remember that at the end of the day, this is a team that entered with pretty inconsistent expectations, right? You heard all this stuff about the team having issues and people predicting, USA could crash and burn in the tournament. And those first two games, man, they're so fun, so thrilling, so many reasons to love this group. But ultimately, you got to remember we're the United States, and soccer never has been our thing as a nation. And Belgium, it seems like, with the struggles, people are writing them off with the age. That's a world-class football program at the end of the day. America is not. What really summed it up, I thought, really nicely was Stu Holden in the post-game coverage of the game last night said, well, we are who we thought we were. This is what we thought the United States was. This is what the United States has been. It's what the United States is.
I echo
That's
some of
what
that
it
sentiment.
boils down to for me.
I talked to Davian about this too. We did a little morning phone call last night, and the big theme for me personally was, if you had told most Americans, including myself before this tournament, hey, the U.S., they're going to top their group, they're going to win their first round matchup, and then they're going to lose to Belgium, most people would say that is perfectly fine. That was the expectation, was to for sure get out of the group stage. Potentially was winning the group was a little bit like up in there, but getting second place in the group would have been fine. And okay, you win your first match, great. You move on to the round of 16. The U.S. has had their struggles, obviously, not making it to the quarter since 2002, where they conveniently beat Mexico, funny enough. And you lose to a Belgium squad that we had seen go all the way to get third place back in 2018 in Russia, had a underwhelming showing, obviously, in Qatar, but as Theodore mentioned, they are this is a nation that is very invested in soccer. I'm gonna keep calling it soccer. I'm sorry. I don't care. I'm gonna keep calling it soccer, but very heavily invested, has loads of talent. I mean, how many nations can say, okay, now we're gonna roll in our subs. Here's Jeremy Doku. Kevin De Bruyne is just gonna be on the bench for the most part of this game. Break glass in case of emergency. Oh yeah, Romelu Lukaku. Yeah, he can come on too with the last 10 minutes. Most nations would be starting all three of those guys for the full entirety of the 90 minutes. Belgium and we saw it. Belgium was a much deeper roster. They had much more talent, and they played up to a top 10 nation that they really hadn't shown for the most part in this tournament. And for the most part, getting back to my point, overall, I still think this was a successful tournament from the U.S. They met the expectations that a lot of people set out for them, but the way that they showed up in that game versus Belgium, and just a loss of swagger, loss of emotion, and really just a loss of they just completely lost out there. That has certainly made this whole run it makes you feel a lot worse about things, even though, again, if you told most people going into this tournament this was going to be the result, they lose to Belgium in the round of 16, most people would take that, especially knowing that they won their group.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly true. I think that the expectations from the beginning really did morph after the group stages and after seeing such an exciting result, but also after seeing really other teams not performing as well and really believing that, we have a chance, right? We saw Paraguay, in the round of 16, while they played a nasty game, and we could talk about that separately, and the refereeing in that game, but, France only beat them 1-0, right? The U.S. had a much better result. I believe it was 3-1, if I'm not mistaken. So, clearly, Team USA was riding the high heading into the round of 16. And to crash out and burn like that is awful in many ways. And, I don't want to spend too much time on Team USA. But one thing that, Raffi, you and I spoke about and have been speaking about throughout the podcast, throughout TikTok videos and everything, has been, what does the future of soccer look like in the United States? And the question is, does this performance from Team USA inspire a future generation, or does it continue the status quo and maintain really what it was 4 years ago? Theodore, I do want to hear your thoughts on that. What do you think? Do you think there's future generations are inspired by this performance, by the first four games, or do you think that last night's crash and burn really kind of put a halt in that inspiration for a lot of kids?
I've gone back and forth on this a lot. We've actually had conversations in the office just talking about it because you keep hearing it ad nauseum. Oh, they're going to inspire the next generation. It goes on and on and on. And I think people look too much into that sometimes. But I also think that soccer, objectively speaking, is a sport that has grown significantly and will continue to grow significantly. I just look at this idea of American exceptionalism, right? This grand, we are Americans, we're the best at everything. And there's clearly room to grow in this sport, and we clearly have the athletes to do it. I'm sorry, but if America was a soccer-obsessed country, we are winning most World Cups that are played. We are a blue blood in the sport, whatever the term for soccer is. I don't know if blue blood's the word, but is it ever going to make any sense at all to put your talented, athletic son into the sport of soccer? Because I think it would be crazy, too, if I had, my son, he could be a defensive back. He could be a receiver. He's tall. He could be a basketball player. I'm never moving him to soccer. It just doesn't really make sense. And I actually saw a Clay Travis tweet earlier today talking about the absurd amount of money it costs to put a kid through soccer. I didn't even realize that, it's basically Little League and travel baseball costs on steroids. I just don't think it's going to change much from where it is. I think it would be cool for that to happen, but I just think there are too many things that would need to change for soccer to really hit the level it needs to reach and for things to progress past this point. You're at an okay baseline right now. I mean, you're barring any more 2018 crazy scenarios. He should be in just about every World Cup, right? You've shown that you can make knockout rounds, especially if this 3-team in a group advancing crap continues, because that's just absurd. You're at an okay level. I really, really don't see.
Yeah,
how
and
you're
especially,
gonna
I think the thing that hurts U.S. soccer too, just getting the support, is the fact that we just saw a sport that a lot of people are saying soccer was catching up to, and that's hockey. And we just saw both the U.S. men's team and the U.S. women's team both win the gold medals versus Canada recently in the Olympics earlier this year. And that got a lot of people excited about hockey, very into hockey, started investing into hockey. And for this USA team, most people, I myself, I can't speak to you guys obviously, but my parents put me into the first two sports that I played when I was 5-6 years old was soccer and baseball. And obviously, yes, Theodore, you hit the nail on the head. And that's with most sports too, just in the U.S. in general, where there's all these travel fees, travel sports, travel soccer, really expensive. My brother did travel soccer for a couple of years. Certainly, again, much more money than you would think for a sport like soccer, especially in the U.S. But I do think that, again, not performing up to what people's expectations were versus that Belgium squad was certainly disappointing. Belgium finally showed up as we expected them to show up, but it was just disappointing going into that game and the way that they lost, where if the U.S. fought hard, they still had the swagger, and let's say they lost in a penalty shootout, or they lost to just a great goal like 2-1 in stoppage time, or 2-1 at the end, similar to that game that they lost to the Netherlands in the round of 16 last World Cup in Qatar. That the vibes were much better there of like, wow, we just took Netherlands to the end of that game and we just did not like give up. We kept fighting, etc. And if that was the result again here, yeah, it's the same round you're losing in, but it's okay, well, we won our group this time. We won a match finally in the knockouts, and we fought a top 10 nation to the very end, and that's just not what happened. And the mental mistakes really just mounted, and they just got outclassed by a Belgian squad that I was very critical of, and then I got shushed real quickly. So, Davian, unless you have any final thoughts, I think the best thing to do would be, I know some of these round of 16 games were really solid, especially the ones that were on Sunday. Some of them a little bit more subpar. We obviously did our breakdown of USA Belgium, but I think the big one that I definitely want to talk about and spend a little bit more time on before we kind of go a little bit quick round is definitely just the Brazil-Norway game, because that was just an unbelievable game. And we're talking about the U.S. here, and a lot of the vibes is disappointment, like, oh, like we should have like done better, etc. Brazil, from winning in 2002, has just been on a consistent decline now, it feels like, just with talent, with developing their players, and a result versus Norway where Holland just completely took over, and Brazil really played like a team that was inferior in a sense, where they kept playing back. They didn't try to dictate the play like we'd seen Brazil in past years. It was really surprising to see how poor Brazil was, Davian, in that game versus Norway. They really just let Norway take the game.
As we wait for Davian to settle back into things, yeah, I mean, that it was outrageous. It was, for as much as any person in America wants to be upset over a loss to Belgium, how exponentially higher is that in Brazil? You know, I saw a tweet from somebody, basically a Brazilian, basically going off on the rise of Protestantism in their country, saying that, oh, if the country was still Catholic, we would be competing, because they're like just going into all these socioeconomic, religious, demographic things, doing everything to try to find a reason, to try to figure out why their country of 300 million soccer-obsessed people is doing this on the global stage. And really, I mean, my lifetime, this is the fourth World Cup that I can consciously remember, and the first one started with a 7-1 loss in your own country in the semifinals against Germany. It just feels like everything is spiraling for the Brazilians. I would be besides myself. I know you have a manager who appears, at least in his early statements, committed to staying with the country and building. I would have a really hard time even justifying bringing him back right now. I'd be doing everything to try and figure this out, because it's frankly unacceptable. I would be besides myself in every way, shape, and form.
100%. And it's especially because they brought him in as someone who's helped retool, rebuild some of these high caliber clubs in previous jobs and different opportunities with these different teams, and you're like, okay, if there's anyone who can get such a prestigious nation team back on track, it is this guy, and that's just not what happened. Davian, you're back. We're talking a little bit about Brazil and Norway. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts. I don't know how much you heard before you had to step out, but just your overall thoughts on that Brazil-Norway match, because it was, I don't want to take too much away from Norway, obviously, because Norway played, they played like they wanted to win the game, and Holland, not just Holland, but the rest of that team, the rest of the, like, you can't just win a game with just one player, and Norway really as a whole really surrounded Holland with the right players, and their goalie was just in great form for the most part in that game too. But Davian, any takeaways from that Norway-Brazil game?
Yeah, before that, I just want to mention that, Raffi, we haven't had issues with internet in probably like 50 plus episodes. The moment Theodore comes back, it's, it's like things never change, right? Maybe it's Theodore, maybe it's the goddess that is Holland, or God that is Holland. I mean, in all honesty, what a game by Norway, what a game by Holland. He's just an absolute beast. But I think this goes back to really Brazil just not showing up. Like, this is Brazil. Like, Brazil is the pinnacle of soccer. I was in Brazil in February. I saw what soccer means to that country, and I felt like the coaching style was just not reflective of Brazilian soccer. Brazilian soccer is known to be sexy. It's the samba football. It's the flashy moves. It's the players cutting in. And what I saw from Brazil was very reflective of what looked like European soccer. And of course that goes back down to coaching, but at the same time, they also don't have that star power. Vinny Jr. is not what Neymar was when Neymar was young. He cannot take over a game the same way that Neymar did. And I feel like that's what we really saw. I think we saw a great, of course, performance from Norway's goalkeeper. I'm not going to be pronouncing his name for the same reasons. Nyland. Actually, I can pronounce that name. I can't pronounce any other Norwegian soccer player names, though. But with that being said, it was cool. It was a great game. It was a great game. It was cool to see Holland really go all out. As a lifelong Neymar fan, it was sad to see him go out like that, but at the same time, this needs to be a wake-up call for Brazil. Something is not right and clearly not clicking, and they need to go back. The future generations need to be are definitely going to be inspired by this performance, being like, let me be the next player that stands up in that way. I think that the inspiration in Brazil is different than the inspiration how it works in the U.S. There's a lot of kids who are definitely in the favelas all across Brazil who are looking at this game and being like, you know what, I want to go up there. I want to win the
David,
the next
you also hit the nail on the head too
Brazil.
with the root cause and the root problem. And this was partially obviously with when you have a manager who's coached a lot of clubs in Europe too. But when you look at Brazil, and I watched a great YouTube video about it, and I wish I can remember at the top of my head who posted it, but it has probably millions of views. So most people are right. I don't need to hype it up too much. It's got plenty of views. But when you look at the Brazilian national team from the past when they were winning and had a lot of success versus the national team nowadays, there was a high density and a high majority of the starting 11 and just overall the roster for those Brazilian teams in the past that won. Not to unk myself. Technically, Brazil, the last time Brazil won, I was alive, albeit I was a month old, a couple days old, honestly. So it's not too, I wasn't conscious for that, and just to put that out there. But those Brazilian squads in the past that had a lot of success, they were predominantly raised through the Brazilian system, played at Brazilian clubs, and really embodied the spirit and the play of the Brazilian soccer, the Brazilian football. And now when you look at this Brazilian squad overall, majority, if not all of them, have all gone to Europe. So when you say, Davian, they're playing like a European style of soccer, yeah, they are, not only because of their coach, but also just because all their players, rather than going as a 14, 15, 16-year-old through the Brazilian leagues and making their way up and then making the jump, they're going from 13, 14 years old immediately to Europe, where they lose some of that Brazilian nature that a lot of their soccer players in the past have played with. And
they lose the samba.
Exactly. So I definitely think that's more of it's definitely a cultural thing that also needs to be fixed at the end of the day. But Theodore, any games that you want to shift to now? Obviously, Mexico England was a fantastic game. France Paraguay, the terrorism that was Paraguay, and then there's the whole. I don't know if you guys read up on the whole Mbappe versus the Paraguayan senator who said. I'll just encourage people to read up on it because it's just terrible stuff that was said about Mbappe, and Mbappe was very stoic and very just completely handled it completely
I think he
professionally,
handled
honestly
it incredibly well.
a bit too professionally because I would have just ignored it, but he did a great job of that. So Theodore, where do you kind of want to go with the rest of the round of 16? Obviously, again, to all three of the host cities or host countries rather get knocked out too, although we did last the longest, so USA is at least first in something.
We did. We lasted an extra day? Yeah. Well, it's better than nothing, you know.
Better than
US on
nothing.
top
Let's
like
start with the absolute masterpiece that we just watched earlier today. How about that? We witnessed greatness in every way, shape, and form.
Some would say it was
say
corruption.
that. Some would also say that it is a complete violation of the idea of, spirit of the game and of the rules, and overreach by refs to VAR is
Fully.
ridiculous. I don't want to go into this for 5 minutes because I could start yelling about how dumb it is and how it's ruining everything. We're not going to do that. At the end of the
fully
day,
implement it or you don't.
Argentina, even if they were
there's
down
no-
3-0, I believe would have pulled off that comeback. That was a legendary moment from Lionel Messi. And I think my biggest takeaway from that game, actually, and if you can include the Cape Verde game too, you look back at, I've been alive for really two, quote, dynasties in the world of soccer, and that is Spain around the turn of the 2010s and this Argentina team. We remember that Spanish team as just a collection of great players. You have all these heroes and legends of football that all came together to reach international dominance. Argentina, to me, still feels like we think of it as Messi and his supporting cast. I think it's time for that to change. Because I look and I see the person who I believe is, yes, the greatest player to ever touch a soccer ball. But I also just see an incredible supporting cast that, if Leo Messi did not exist, would probably be still viewed as one of the best generations of Argentinian football. It is time that we start collectively accepting this Argentinian group as an incredible, legendary, all-time great generation, because what it has been able to accomplish is nothing short of special.
Yeah, that's a great take. I really think this Argentina team, people compare, and, we could talk about this, Ronaldo versus Messi, and it's like, well, Ronaldo's washed up, and he should have been benched, and you know what, maybe we can make the argument for that. I think that,
let's be honest here. I don't want to be a
played
defender,
good
obviously,
football.
but what are you expecting out of a 41-year-old Ronaldo in the first place?
Right. But I think another factor, though, is just the supporting cast around Ronaldo versus Messi. I think the supporting cast around Argentina is far better than Portugal's, and it will be far better because you look at that bench on Argentina's side, the youth on the team, there's so many players that are just waiting for Messi. When Messi retires, there will be somebody else who steps up, and if it's not somebody who steps up, it will be a collective team that will understand how to play together, and I don't think they will lose a step. Come 2030, this Argentina team will be a surefire top 5 contender without a doubt, no matter what happens in this current World Cup, I think.
Moving over, we mentioned Ronaldo already, and obviously the favorites, Spain, Argentina, Egypt. I'd love to talk more about it, but unfortunately, unlike Theodore, I don't have the pleasure of the World Cup being my job, so I had to step away for one game, and of course, it's Argentina-Egypt, so... I know it's unfortunately my part-time job just keeps getting in the way of my full-time job, which is watching these World Cup matches. If any of my managers are watching this video, they know that I have in fact been working. Anyways, before I put myself on blast further, let the record show with my work on hand currently, but I won't get too corporate right now. Portugal, Spain. This was, for Portugal, again, it was disappointing because it felt like they could have definitely utilized Ronaldo in a different way. I don't think he necessarily should have been starting. I definitely think they could have monitored his minutes well. And even with him just the Portugal squad as a whole, David, you hit the nail on the head. They just didn't surround him very well, and they really didn't do him many favors here because it just is like Ronaldo was terrible, Ronaldo was terrible, Ronaldo was terrible. And it's like, okay, yes, but what are you can't be expecting 41-year-old Ronaldo to just completely take over a game versus Spain. And in light of that too, where it's like, yeah, there wasn't the supporting cast. On the other hand too, Spain, 6 clean sheets, record, longest clean sheet streak that we've seen in the World Cup. Spain still, I'm still kind of, I wonder if what your guys' thoughts are on what the Spanish team is, and if you guys still think that Spain could potentially go on a deep run. I obviously, when we did our first predictions with the bracket, when we just went off or when we did our group stage predictions, I had Spain winning it all. I've since then flipped to France, which I think is the heavy favorite now, but I'm still trying to figure out and get a good read on the Spanish team. I think they'll still be able to take care of business versus Belgium, even though it looks like they finally flipped the switch that we've been waiting for them to flip. But yeah, just some of your guys' thoughts on the Spain-Portugal this game, because it really felt like both squad, like Portugal for a top 10, top 5, I think they're ranked 5th in the FIFA rankings. They really didn't play like a squad that was the 5th ranked. And on the flip side too, maybe I'm just thinking too much of Spain. They beat Austria 3-0 in the first round, but I'm always leaving these games with Spain expecting a little bit more from them personally.
You expect a little bit more, but they always do enough. And I think, first of all, we were certainly too harsh on the team following the Cape Verde game because, man, what a story. That was incredible. And it ended up being just an objectively solid team.
Yeah.
Spain has not been the prettiest team in this World Cup. I don't think it'll matter. I had Spain entering the tournament, going to the final. I still have them going to the final, losing to Argentina. I haven't seen enough to scare me off from the Spanish side. Now, about Portugal, I think Portugal is a very talented side, great midfielder. You got a lot going for you there. But what I kind of want to point to, and this is by no means a perfect comparison, but you talked earlier in the show, Raffi, about Norway and a team that was really built super well around Erling Haaland. And Haaland is never going to light the world up defensively. He's there on the field for one reason, right? And that's to score goals. So is Cristiano Ronaldo. I see a Norway side that is optimized around their world-breaking striker, saying, you know what, it doesn't matter if Haaland touches the ball 3 times in the game. We're going to do what we need to do to be in the game when he touches it and ultimately get him the touch. Now, Ronaldo, he had his chance late, obviously, with that header. That was a playable ball, and you can make the case that maybe Ronaldo should not have been in the lineup. If another comparison I'd draw to him is probably a team that's going to try to build around LeBron James in this coming NBA season. I think there's a comp that can be drawn there. But I just think overall, Portugal, at some point, you made the decision that Cristiano Ronaldo, he's the greatest player in our country's history. He's going to be a part of this World Cup squad. He's going to be starting for us throughout the World Cup. You cannot fault them for making that decision given Ronaldo's history and track record. When you made that decision, the second you made it, everything had to become, how do we compensate for what we're losing with Ronaldo on the field and optimize Ronaldo to get the touches he needs and for us to win with him. And I really just don't feel like Portugal did that as a squad this World Cup.
I definitely think it's more of a, not to say it's a failure on their end, but their generation at this moment in time has not lived up to being ranked 5th in the FIFA rankings. And obviously the FIFA rankings are they have their faults to them. If you lose in the knockout, you should be docked points. It's ridiculous how you can't lose points for losing games in the knockout. So that, for me, just shows it's a flawed system. But for this Portugal squad, who has so much talent, it really feels like they just haven't lived up to the potential. And obviously, they've had their better runs. They still have a Euro to their name in 2016. But at the end of the day, the World Cup, Theodore, you hit the nail on the head. I don't have much else to say there, obviously. You have to do a better job of supporting Ronaldo. And a lot of the guys that you were hoping to take a step up or really become that next generation really didn't do that. And for Spain, I can't really fault you too much for your thoughts, because you look at 2010, and obviously you guys were 5 when that was going on, 6.
Yeah,
I was 8, so like that was the first one that I consciously kind of remember, and that was really just Spain beating. I just remember Spain beating the Netherlands and Iniesta scoring his goal in stoppage time, in extra time. But regardless, Spain won every single one of their knockout games, 1-0. So Theodore, you're like, this is definitely something that we've seen from Spain in the past. I don't think the Spain team is as good as the 2010 team. Obviously, that was insane, but. Yes, like Spain, yes, they haven't been winning pretty, but to your point, in 2010, they won the World Cup, and every single one of those games was 1-0. I didn't watch all those games, obviously. I was 8, but you still would imagine that a lot of them were probably similar to that Spain-Portugal game, where Spain just won 1-0. Maybe most people like myself were hoping for a little bit more, but if you're getting the job done, and you're able to shut the other squad down, and run 4 clean sheets all the way to the final, no one's going to complain. No one's going to say, oh, they weren't a flashy winner, this, that. All that matters is they win. And so far, Spain is definitely, to your point and to your credit, they've shown that they're capable of winning games in the knockouts and being some solid opponents at this point. So there's no reason to really doubt and really change up too much if they just keep taking care of business.
There is, Raffi, one man, the dictator himself, Mbappe, who can step up and stop this Spanish team. I'm sorry. I need to say this. What I've seen from this French team has been complete dominance game after game. Now, you can ask the question, have they really been battle-tested? I don't know. I really don't know. But I think what I've seen offensively, that this team doesn't just run through Mbappe. It can run through Dembele. It can run from Oswald. There's so many players on that team who can create scoring chances, and not just create them, actually score, which is a huge factor, because you could make you could shoot a million shots but not make a single one. I mean, just ask Mitchell Robinson when he gets to the free throw line. Really, I think that this French team defensively is also shown great prowess. They fought a really hard and rough and honestly brutal game against Paraguay, and showed that they can be physical too and still win. And that's why I think that they can really defeat the Spanish team, and I would not be surprised if they do.
This France team has shown that they can win in multiple different ways versus different nations, and you beat Senegal, who I still highly regard. Yes, they didn't live up to their expectations, but still, it was a very close game in the first half, and then France really took over that second half game, 1-3-1. There was obviously a late goal from Senegal to at least get a little bit of, okay, like, we're not like completely cooked, but still France controlled that game. They destroyed Iraq. That was kind of expected, although all props to Iraq for dealing with that, and hey, it wasn't their worst loss in the World Cup, so at least there's that. I really wish that Norway-France game was in match day 2 instead of match day 3, because yes, they destroyed Norway, but yes, it was their B team essentially, so not too much of a measuring stick, but they completely destroyed an inferior European nation in Sweden, who has two very solid, two of the best strikers arguably in that next tier after you get from Holland and Isak, and then you also have Gyökeres, who are both high-profile young strikers who are definitely going to have a lot of success for Sweden in the future. And they completely controlled that game. And then in a game where we would have seen a lot of nations really fold and really get drawn into the mud, they didn't let Paraguay at any point dictate that play. They stuck to their game. They continued to get good chances. They didn't get frustrated. And it was clear with the penalty that Mbappe scored. It was they were scuffing up the spot. They were just talking nonsense, running their mouth, etc., just getting in the way, doing whatever they could. Mbappe scores the goal. He's like, get a load of these guys. These guys are just like a bunch of like crazy people. And they just played a very emotionally intelligent game from France, and really showed so far in this tournament. Morocco's going to be obviously a more offensive threat than Paraguay. Paraguay really had to just drag them into the mud if they wanted any chance. Morocco's going to give them a harder fight. But this France squad has shown that they can really win in any type of match, which is just why I think so many people, including myself, are so high on this French team right now.
Yeah. Theodore, name one player you're most excited to see throughout the rest of this World Cup.
I mean, I really don't want to go for the super low-hanging fruit, but how can it not be Holland right now? How could I give any other name besides Erling Haaland?
Yeah.
it is absolutely electric what he's done. He has single-handedly made me expect the country of Norway to have success in soccer games. I expect Norway to go out and beat England and punch its ticket to the semifinal. And look, Nyland has been sensational. The team has been optimized for Holland's success, but at the end of the day, it boils down to the fact that you have a guy who, is there a player in the sport right now with a better chance to score every time he touches the ball? I do not think so. He is special in every sense of the word. And he is, if I could only watch one player the rest of the tournament, it would be him. I want to watch him play club football now, too, because he is just absolutely electric.
Bro is just...
He really
and again, too, it's like Nyland and especially their backline, too. Those are the big questions for Norway going into this tournament. How is their defense going to perform? How's their forward in the back going to perform? How is Nyland going to perform? Nyland? And they've all just been up to the task, and they've just been absolutely fantastic. Before we close things out, I want to talk, obviously, Canada-Mexico, or Canada-Morocco. Morocco really took care of their business, but I do want to still talk about, and obviously Switzerland took care of business versus Colombia, albeit that was a very boring game where it felt like both of those squads were really just playing into stoppage time and playing into a penalty shootout. Colombia certainly had their chances, so did Switzerland, but it really didn't feel like either squad really took control of that match at any point, and it kind of felt like they're both content with just letting the game drag on. Switzerland, for only the second time going into a shootout in the knockouts, was quite surprising. I feel like Switzerland is the embodiment of the penalty shootout in stoppage time, but that might also be that they're very neutral. But overall, I like Switzerland. I mean, their flag's a big plus, so how can you hate them? But before we move on to some of the predictions right now and previewing who we think is going to go to the semis, any thoughts on Mexico-England? Because for England, in such a hostile environment, you lose. Obviously, it was a red card. That was for sure a red card. And for them to play 30 minutes, bunker down, and hold on to their 2-goal lead, it was just... It's a shame that they're playing Norway, because that was such a great performance by England, a team that I like to knock a lot, but they just played up to the task. They didn't let playing in that Azteca dawn on them or bring them down. And even with Mexico just down a man, obviously, England was down a man. For Mexico to continuously just fire and get chances after chance after chance, for England to hold strong and just continuously defend, it was one of the great performances I think we've seen out of the World Cup. And I definitely wanted to touch on that before we move on and then close out the show, because it was just an all-around fantastic performance by England.
Look, I look for...
Raffi, how can you not mention the altitude? Sorry, Theodore, I need to mention the altitude, because the altitude was mentioned like a million times throughout that show.
It's the highest point in all of the Earth,
I was
Davian.
thinking, like, what if I start drinking every time? What if I start drinking every time they say altitude? Sadly, I had work the next day, but I was very much keen on doing that and seeing what the results were going to be. With that being said, Theodore, I know you were probably sitting there for a while in the production office waiting for that game to start. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts, especially when that game started. What you think of that performance from England? You think they're legit? Is it Jude Bellingham that's going to carry them through?
And
Jordan Pickford, absolute masterclass.
It was special. I mean, I like any good American look for any reason to dislike England and knock on them. They gained
no SEC championships.
They gained my respect with that performance, man. It was nothing short of spectacular. And I'd spent the pregame show that I work on, it's called World Cup Now, and Peter Crouch was on the show. And he addressed like a talking point that apparently is very popular over there, and that is, can Jude Bellingham really be the future of English soccer? And the fact that anyone can possibly even consider saying no after watching what he did a few nights ago at the Azteca is ridiculous. He is a superstar. He is a special player. That truly was a great performance. That was, I think you can criticize Mexico's strategy and the very, very low percentage looks they got. But at the end of
Yeah.
the day, I think most teams would have given up that goal in that moment, in that environment, at that altitude. Take a shot, Davian. It just, and I do believe England will reach the end of the road against Norway, but if there was a year for England to win it, I wouldn't be all that mad if it was this year.
It's not coming home though. It's just not.
It's not.
Let's be honest.
It's not.
Let's get into these. Let's get into these quarterfinal and semifinal predictions. I'm sorry. I got Norway taking this like 2-0, or maybe 2-1. I really think this Norway team is unstoppable at this point, especially against a team like England. Just the way that the English team is configured. So yeah, I'm gonna kick it off with that. Rafi, kicking it to you. I'm gonna keep picking puns. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we can just like objectively look at this, but obviously, I have Norway. I think it's going to be more high scoring than you're giving credit to, just because any match with Harry Kane and especially with Jude Bellingham and just how they've looked as a whole in this that past game versus Mexico, it really felt like they turned the clock a little bit and really have shown up so far in the knockouts. So I definitely think it's going to be a more high scoring game. I wouldn't be shocked if it's 3-3 going into the penalty shootout. I think Norway, I'm going to give the edge to them, give them a 3-2 win, but I mean, when we look at this too, and Theodore, if you want to just give your prediction on the game too, we can certainly do that. But I feel like when I look at the quarterfinals, it seems like the likely scenario here is France, Spain, Norway, Argentina. Theodore, if you want to give your thoughts on either a specific game in general, but for you guys just specifically, out of these four matchups and those four teams, which one do you think is the most likely to lose and fall out here? Because I think there's a solid argument for all these respective nations to drop these games, and I don't think, as much as I want to say all four, France, Spain, Norway, Argentina, are good to go, they all have their respective flaws. They're all going up against obviously they're playing against four really prolific nations to make it this far in the final eight. So I just want to hear your guys' thoughts too overall about that too.
I think we are going to have two classics and two non-competitive games in this quarterfinal. I've already said that I think one of the classics will be Norway-England. Get into that in a minute. The other one, I believe, will be France-Morocco. I really like this Morocco side, and I'm a lot lower on France than you guys are. I know you guys talked about how high you were on that team. I think they are going to fall before the final. I don't think we're going to see them play in this final. Morocco takes them to extra time. Morocco may take them to a penalty kick. Morocco may win this game. I am ultimately going with France, but I've been impressed by this Morocco team. It's crazy for me right now looking back and thinking that just 3.5 years ago, this was a Cinderella underdog run. Because, maybe that was a label that I was not as into it then as I am now. Maybe that was a label that was unfairly placed on it. But the bigger piece is I watch this Morocco team play, and I see a team that carries itself like it should be at the top of the world, like it is on top of the world. Like 2022 was no fluke whatsoever. You have a couple world-class players. You have a team that has confidence. You have a team that looks well coached. I really don't think there's much Morocco is missing. Ultimately, yes, I understand the France pick, and I am going with France just because the talent is off the charts. Do not be surprised at all if Morocco makes it a second straight semifinal. Already the first African side to ever reach consecutive quarterfinals. Could take it a step further.
Yeah, and especially Morocco too. This is obviously, naturally, you go on a deep run for the first time. This is their first time truly having expectations too, of you're expected now to go on a deep run, and where we've seen some nations, see Denmark, where they just completely falter and they just struggle to continue that continuous escalation up to be one of the top footballing nations. Morocco has lived up to the bill and saying, yes, 2022 was not a fluke. There's no reason why we cannot win the World Cup, and they've certainly shown that so far. Davian.
Yeah.
Your overall thoughts on the quarters?
Yeah, I really have been, I think, doubting this Morocco team. And maybe Theodore, you are right. You know what? Maybe I've been really hyping up this France team way too much. But I think a team that I could see falling, and this might be like a hot take, and it is a hot take, is Spain. In all honesty, yes, Spain has done enough to win these games, but so has Belgium in that similar fashion. And I think that Belgium has a depth on their bench, which, if they needed to turn up in the 80th minute, which is usually around the same time, Spain usually turns it up as well, with Lukaku coming in and De Bruyne, they don't need you can't play them in the full game, but I think for 20 minutes, they're still some of the most elite players, on the field. And that's a game where I would see if you wanted me to pick one team to be a crazy upset, I think it would be Spain. With Norway, England, I'm picking Norway, but I honestly think that Norway should be favored. I'm not counting out this English team. I think this English team can take its extra time, of course. And I think it'll be an all-time classic. I am setting down time for myself to make sure I'm watching that Norway-England game on Saturday, because it will be one of the best games in this entire World Cup, and we've seen a lot of games. So those are my overall thoughts.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts from either of you guys before we close out the show? Obviously, ran a little bit long, but I'm more than happy to do that. Theodore owes us a little bit of time for the Gap In podcast. So I think an extra 15 minutes won't hurt anyone. Obviously, there's so much to get to, so it's never a bad thing when we go over. Theodore, Davian, any final thoughts before we close this show out?
Yeah, let me just leave you guys with a complete disagreement of everything that Davian said about Spain. Look, I'm high on the Spaniards. What more have you wanted from them? You had
domination. I haven't seen it.
Game with your two best players not being factors in the game, right? Not playing most of it, coming in out of desperation late. Oh, and you're playing a Cape Verde team that went on a special run, and that, the laws of normal sports do not apply in situations like this. That game's a complete mulligan. You humiliate Saudi Arabia. You win a game you really didn't have all that much motivation to win against a really, really talented Uruguay team that had everything on the line. You managed to win that game. You demolish a bad Austria team. And look, ultimately Portugal has world-class soccer players.
Yeah,
Portugal
but I guess it just wasn't as high in Portugal. I thought I would have seen more out of Spain against that Portugal game. That's where I'm pointing.
Also,
my
big
also, don't get it twisted. Uruguay has looked completely out of sorts.
Yeah, come on.
Uruguay
was not
that great. I will give you the credit of the Cape Verde draw and calling that a mulligan. I think overall we gave most of these now top nations mulligans. I think we're going to see that more. I think that's just a symptom of the expanded playoff. 8 out of the top third place teams get in. So a lot of these top nations are like, okay, well, whatever. Like if we draw, it's like whatever. Like it doesn't really we just need to make sure we take care of business first. And as long as we take business first, like one nation, typically it's like
which is awful. I think that we could get into that.
We're good.
Yeah,
I that's for another day. I personally like it, but that's for another day. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole right now. I think the big thing for me that's got me back with Spain is Portugal. I would have liked to see it a little bit more, but again, like you look at the 2010 World Cup and it's kind of the Spanish style to win these close games and just control the pace. I thought they again, even for a 1-0 game versus Portugal, I didn't really feel like Portugal had much going on the entire game, and that's mostly credit to Spain limiting their chances. And any time the ball went into the box, Spain just took care of business, cleared it out, and then it was on to the next thing. Spain played a lot of that game in their offensive half, and for a 1-0 game, and this is similar to even the Cape Verde draw, which obviously now we're giving much more credit to Cape Verde for how good they've been, really went under the radar for a lot of us, most people. You see a Spain squad that's still like, they take their chances when they come, but they're not gonna, like, they just will control the play. They'll contribute all the chances, and if you just look at the stats, which obviously you can't do, Spain has controlled every single one of these games that they played in. They just haven't had the goals to back it up. Will that finishing come back to haunt them? Potentially, but for the most part, even with the results not being every game being a win and every game being a 4-0 win, Spain has controlled the game in all aspects. There hasn't been a moment that I've watched Spain saying they've lost control of the game. They've been in control the entire time.
But they haven't looked good.
Which is why I think it is such a fascinating. Hopefully we get the matchup semifinal Spain-France, because those are two teams that just find ways. Those are two teams with all the talent in the world, all the expectations I just think that game, and it's going to be hard for anything to be a clear defined game of the tournament, because we've been blessed with just such a memorable special World Cup. I think that Spain versus France would be incredible in every sense of the word. Hope we get it.
100%. All right, with that, that'll do it for this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. We hope you enjoyed. A lot to discuss. Theodore, great to have you back on again. I know you haven't been the main face of the production at Fox, but every time there's something, I just pray that you're not the one who's making this AI slop and nonsense. I just want to put that. Outside of that, I've been loving the coverage. Most of the stuff I'm going to give you, obviously, the credit for, and Zlatan, obviously. I give him his flowers. It's not Fox running this, it's Zlatan running this. But you've been doing a great job. It's great to see you succeeding right now. It's great that you came back to your roots, obviously, and you're always welcome to come on to talk football, college football, etc. too. So thanks for coming on, Davian. I appreciate you dealing with my nonsense every week and always coming on as well. You certainly don't have to put up with my DR Congo over Uzbekistan.
That game was rigged, Raffi, and you know it. And you know it was rigged, and I'm sick and tired of you constantly bringing up this game. That was clearly rigged, all right? The president of Uzbekistan should have stepped in the same way Trump did, okay? I'm done with hearing from you, Raffi. I do want to say one last thing before we sign off. Theodore, some of your predictions in the past have shockingly come true in the NFL, and because we're talking about football, I do need to cover this in the last minute. One, overpaying QBs has clearly led to the downfall of so many teams, and underpaying them, doing like a Sam Darnold example, has clearly worked. Third of all, Kyler Murray turned out to actually suck like you predicted, which it really shocks me. Fourth, you at one point said Kirk Cousins would do really well, and he has at times, and I didn't need to give your flowers there, because when I see those things, when I see that happen, when I see those teams succeed, when I see Kirk Cousins, when I see Kyler Murray just absolute suck, I think of you, and I think of your predictions. So Theodore, like Raffi said, you're always welcome on this podcast. This podcast, we would not be 152 episodes, 152 or 153, it doesn't matter. We would not be here without you.
This is 154.
You're a part of this, little family, I guess we call it, where we, hop on for about an hour each week and just talk sports. It's a good time. So Theodore, thanks again.
Hey, it's great to be here. Great, brings back memories, and very, very vindicated in my Kyler Murray takes.
Dave, I'm glad you gave him the victory lap here, because I too have, every time I see Kyler Murray slander and just like his downfall, it just, the thought of me, like the thought
of us arguing
podcast that we've been on,
back, yeah.
it really does come back. So that'll do it for this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. See ya.
Roll Tide. Peace.